All right, everybody, we are live with another episode of Everything Construction. My name is Gloria Marie. I'm your host. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a builder by trade and now business development lead for the luxury custom and outdoor space at Emser Tile and Stone. I'm here today with my buddy, Ozzie Osborn. And I will let him introduce himself, but I'm so honored that you took the day today, of all days, on your birthday, to spend with me on my live. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Happy birthday to me.
Yeah.
Just before this session here going live, I was just telling you that this is the highlight of my day so far. Just to hang out with you for a little bit, chat. It's been a long time since we've caught up, so looking forward to it. But yeah, I'll quick introduction about myself. I am Ozzie Osborn. I'm the kinder, gentler, better looking version, I think, and I've been around the sales game for a really long time on the manufacturing side, the distribution side. Primarily, it's been mostly distribution, whether that be commercial distribution or industrial distribution, which is where I'm at now. I spent the last 10 plus years, building teams, worked for a construction supply company, worked for a historic restoration company out of New York, and really just enjoy the distribution space. I think it's a really wonderful crossroads between the built environment and manufacture. And it's been a whole lot of fun for me navigating both sides of those relationships on the supplier side. So looking forward to this conversation here. I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Thanks, Gloria.
Yeah. And, it's so funny because I went from the build side to the construction supply side. And you and I have been connected for many years now, and met actually while we were both in New York. And, had you asked me when we first met that I would end up on the supply side and distribution side of the construction industry, I'd have been like, no.
Yeah, because you can get beat up a little bit on that side too, so
well, we're going to get into all of that, but before we get into the nitty-gritty of the supply side and why it is just a whole nother side of construction, and there's so many layers to it that people have no idea even exists. They just think of whatever the end product is or the material or that they ordered. So why construction? I ask that to everybody who joins our show. And for those of you who are in the middle of your workday, yes, my Outlook is popping off. It's Friday. That's how the supply side works.
Yeah, it is. And that's a fun question. Because full disclosure, that's not where I started my career. I left high school in Texas, which is where I'm at now. I haven't lived in Texas except for the last year in 25 years. There's a big span in between. And I left high school. I went to a military academy and spent a little bit of time, doing that. I didn't graduate, which was fine. It was God had something else for me in store, and went back home to Texas. Got a mathematics degree, really just because it was the fastest way out. Got a mathematics degree.
Did you say mathematics? He didn't say mathematics. He was
mathematics. Yeah. And to be more specific, mathematical sciences, so
okay.
Yeah. So really nerded out over that kind of stuff. And I became a math and science teacher. So I did that for a few years, and then moved to New York, got into the New York City DOE, and decided I didn't want to do it anymore. So
the New York City DOE will do that to you, or any DOE. I think like, any major city, you're like, nah.
Yeah, no, we were done really, really quickly. And so
but then you picked construction anyway.
Well, I didn't choose the thug life. The thug life chose me. And so I was 1,500 miles from home in Texas, living in New York, and your boy needed a job. That's really what it came down to. And
of course,
I threw my resume out there, and I ended up getting picked up by a large manufacturer of paints and coatings. And went through their sales program and all that stuff. And I thought, well, I could sling paint for a couple of years. It'd be fine, until I figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And I had I had a 12-year career with this company. And
Okay.
and I could go through the whole gambit of the things that I did, but I did some really, really cool stuff. Got to open up some new branches, launched a location in New York City and, in Manhattan, ran some sales territories, got to stand on top of some really cool bridges and
Right.
highways and stuff, and it was just a whole lot of fun. And I had a really great career, but it wasn't just about the built environment. Let's be clear. I love seeing things to completion. I'm a bit of a doer. I like to see things done. There's something very tangible about it, which I really, really enjoy. But more than anything, construction may not be like sexy IT or finance or some of that kind of stuff, and that's fine if that people want to do that. But I learned sales, people, marketing, human resources, distribution. I mean, I learned so much about business that people don't to your point earlier, they don't normally think about, right? They just,
Right.
well, you're going to get some construction materials, you're going to build this bridge, this building, whatever it is, you do remodel on a home, and that's it. But there's just so much more that goes into it, from manufacturer to distribution to end use. And I really enjoyed that piece of it. Got to lead some really cool teams. And so, why construction? Well, I mean, it really just became my part of my story, and it kind of fixed this teaching need that I had to have, this scratch that I had, working
You
with.
were there for 12 years, which
I was
means
there
the
for,
pay was also at least decent.
yeah, oh yeah. Listen, I made a good living. I ended up being a consultant. I worked for a historic restoration company, did some really fun things.
So the
And
pay was good then.
yes, it
Yeah.
was, yeah, provided for my family. And I,
And
there's,
I'm not asking this to be condescending. I'm asking this because most people assume that construction industry, college dropout, you're not going to make a lot of money. But the reality is you're making probably more than your college graduate friends at the time, and you don't have all that extra debt. So I bring this up in these podcasts or these live streams because we're on a platform where people are looking for a new career,
yeah,
and you could literally be anybody and join the construction industry and make good
absolutely.
money to, take care of your family and put
Mhm.
money away and buy property and all of this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I like to highlight that part of it.
I think it's important to highlight. I can't tell you the number. There's two things that come to mind right now. I can't tell you the number of times that I went to one of my clients' houses, plural, right?
Hmm.
And just saw how nice it was. I mean, they were making really, really good money. And let's the one thing that I think, we're not going to get into politics here. I have no interest in doing that,
Of course.
but we've got back 30, 40 years ago, our government made a decision to put a lot of money into our education system and said, hey, people need to go to college. High school's not good enough anymore. Trade school's not good enough anymore.
Right.
Fast forward all of these years, and we don't have the carpenters, the plumbers, the plasterers, the the decorative finish folks that we
Right.
did 30, 40 years ago. This is a supply and demand thing right now.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, working for a construction company, our project management team was paying plumbers and glazers and carpenters and stuff crazy money. And I'm thinking, man, what mistake did I make in my life that I didn't,
Yeah.
that I didn't have the foresight to do this? So
Right.
yeah. And, to your point, yeah, you're not saddled with the debt that you would if, doing what I did, which was to go to college, because that was the advice that I got. Right.
I
So
think many of us got that advice. To your
for
point,
sure.
the education system made a push for it. And
Yeah.
your traditional teacher is, what, in their 20s,
Right.
maybe early 30s before they quit and go find another career like you did. The ones
Yeah.
that last the longest, God bless y'all, you're really in it for the long haul, for the love,
Right.
because
Yeah.
to
If
your
not for the
point, we won't,
pension.
yeah, we won't get into the politics, but there's so many other things that you could do, and serve, right? Still serve the way that you want to serve, and teach. So I
So,
hear you. I hear you.
yeah, I've got one of my best friends. He runs a plumbing company, and he's really one of the sharpest guys I've ever met. But he's a business guy, and
Of
like he can think
course.
about business, right? He's a good plumber too. But more than anything, he knows how to find people to get that done. And he's living his best life, working hard, but living his best life because he's in the trades, and he didn't want to go to
Yeah.
college. And so um, I like to say it's construction isn't sexy, but
It
you
can
know,
be,
but
but
it absolutely can
traditionally
be.
not.
Yeah, right.
Traditionally not.
So yeah, so construction for me it was an accidental fit. I
Right.
wasn't looking at it. So uh I studied languages at the military academy. I was going to do something completely different, and I had to figure out
Right.
life again. Ended up in this, and I said I really like it. It scratched a lot of itches for me. I've had the opportunity to lead some of the best teams I've ever been on, to be on some of the best teams, whether I'm leading or not.
Right.
And still enjoying it, just more on the manufacturing side now.
Yeah, you've been, I would say you have some interesting variety in your portfolio, going from like the super finished side to a little bit of
Mhm.
everything, and now to the manufacturing side of things. And for the folks who are curious, of course, you can go drop Jose, Ozzie, a link. We'll drop it in this show notes. You can go check out his profile and check out his background. But you've worked for some pretty impressive brands, and kind of been all over the place. There is, I'm sure, similarities across the industry, very much as there is in the build side, regardless of whether you're doing interior, exterior work, government work, road work, etc. The
Yeah,
construction industry has a lot of nuances. It requires very intelligent people and team oriented people to make these projects and these things work and build. And those who, see construction that's like delayed, delayed, and delayed, and they seem to be redoing stuff a lot, that's probably not a good team, guys. You know?
yeah,
Or there's people making decisions who don't need to be making decisions, and other people need to be brought into the team, etc. You have been on the supply side of the industry your entire career, basically. I am newer to the supply side of the industry, so I'm going to take this as a class, a class on the supply chain side of the industry. And I'm a builder at heart, so can't sit still in my chair. ADHD,
all right.
whatever people want to label folks who can't sit still at the age of
Yeah.
40, even, you know.
Hey, I'm sitting here fidgeting, not because I'm uncomfortable, because I've got all this extra energy too, right? So
Right, exactly.
it's got to go somewhere.
It's definitely got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So there's one, it's a two-part question, right? That I want to get to in a second. But before we get into absolutely anything, why don't we talk about what is a supply chain and what does a strong supply chain look like?
Okay. Well, so man, I will say this, there are people a heck of a lot smarter than me who are supply chain experts. I mean, I know many of them.
Give us the kindergarten
But
version.
yeah, right, right. Yeah. And I'll get into that, but, if we look at supply chain, um, it is, I think we could get very siloed in speaking about supply chain within our particular market segment, right? Whether we're selling tile at Emser, or whether we're selling paint here, or whether we're doing fasteners, MRO here. We could say, well, this is supply chain to us, and it is, right? But taking it a step further up, like that 30,000 foot view, supply chain to me is really looking at all of the components that come together, all of the various verticals where there are creators, users, and then eventually end users of it, right? So you look, for example, so people don't think about supply chain being on the fuel and logistics side of things, just as an example, right? So
Correct.
many of us, we have expense cards, right? And there's some big companies out there that do that, right? So these expense credit cards and these solutions out there, well, that's supply chain, right? So how does a company take from having one small solution to having a larger solution that's enterprise wide that can enable the business to function and to run, right? So
Right.
it could be your transportation, your TMS providers, your travel and expense things. It could be your different parts to make whatever component that you have. Now on the construction side, supply chain, you've got you've got the manufacturers and you've got the construction companies and those people, right, to keep it real simple. And then ultimately you've got the people who are going to be in the space, all doing it for an owner, whoever the owner is, right? So I say all that to say, well, supply chain really is about identifying who the right partners are to get all of that done.
Right.
In the end, your partnerships are critical. And wherever you sit, whichever lane that you're responsible for, it's identifying the right partners. So supply chain is all of those things, but let's face it, there's bad supply chain, there's bad supply partners, there's good supply chain, there's good supply partners. So soup to nuts, it is, I don't know if that was a kindergarten version, it might be third grade, it might be pre-K, I'm not sure, but
Fifth grade,
but
like fifth grade.
so that we have to get what we need when we need it for the people that we need it for. And so supply chain is just that, and building the systems and the partnerships around it.
Yeah, so let's talk about paint, right? Just because I'm a visual person, I think a lot of people in the construction industry are visual people. So let's walk through what it takes to get a gallon of paint to the store.
Yeah. Yeah, I can do that. And I'll actually just share, so I'm going to share a problem that I encountered a while back,
Okay.
many, many years ago. And it was around this. Do you know what that white stuff is in paint? Do you know what that's called?
The residue that's in the paint?
No, the stuff that makes paint white.
No, I don't. Off the top of my
So
head, no.
yeah, and nobody does, right?
Right.
So it's titanium dioxide.
Okay.
That's what it is. The largest producer of titanium dioxide is in China.
Okay.
And so how does that relate to supply chain? Well, China can come, right? This manufacturer of this titanium dioxide really wants to sell their stuff, right? They want to sell this TiO2 to these paint manufacturers and all this stuff, right? So supply chain, if you're a paint manufacturer, well, you've got to find this white stuff because you can't make your paint if you don't. And so you've got to go to you've got to source it. You've got to get your supply, and you're probably going to call this company out in China or these companies out in China and try to negotiate some sort of deal. And in order to do it, so you've got to have it. They've got to sell it, but they've got the leverage. Because if you say, hey, you know what, I don't want to pay this, I want to pay this. Well, the manufacturer can say, well, I've got so-and-so over here, your competitor, who will pay this. So you're either going to pay this or we're going to go over here and get it done, right? So it's a real problem and it's a real tension. And so supply chain in that case becomes going back to what I was saying before about partnerships.
Right.
You might have to find different partners, all right, a more strategic supplier, whatever it is. And that sourcing part becomes very important in the supply chain side. So what does it take to bring a gallon of paint from manufacturer to your house? Well, it all starts with all of the things that go into a gallon of paint, right? Your surfactants, your soaps, basically, the titanium dioxide, the resins, and all these things, right? And the science behind it. And And eventually it gets into the manufacturing floor. They put it all together. And so you've got cans and lids and buckets and lids and packaging and boxes and all that stuff. So many components go into that. And so we talk about, well, gallon of paint is 80,
Packaging.
right?
Packaging costs money, right?
Packaging, yeah,
Packaging
absolutely.
costs money. I
And
purposely kept this here because I was like, people don't realize that this costs money. Um, you
yeah,
know,
and there's some really and I don't apologize for getting nerded out about this. I mean, it was my life for so many years, but I mean, it's just incredible the amount of effort and people that go into just one
one,
vertical, one
yeah, one
small
vertical.
vertical. It's just
Exactly.
one,
And 1
right?
gallon of paint.
And it's the and you know what? Truth be told, it's the last thing that goes into a building, more or less, right? So you've got to have it painted, and
Or tile, sometimes they paint before tile,
finishes,
tile,
right?
all the finishes, all the finishes.
All those finishes, right? And so it could be looked down upon, right?
Of course.
It's just finishes. But here's the thing: good luck getting a certificate of occupancy without the tile or without the paint. Like, it's just not going to happen. So you've got to have it all, and if you don't have the right partnerships in place, um, to get it completed, then you're just going to struggle the entire way, and that takes an extreme amount of planning. And like I said, we're just talking about paint here. We're not talking
Right.
about anything else.
We could be talking about lumber. We could be talking about steel. We
Mm-hmm.
could be talking about trash bags. Honestly, do you know how many
Sure.
trash bags it takes to build a high rise? I mean, I don't want to be the PM on that job that has to go through that line item, but I mean, it's a line item on the project P&L, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of these components, go into building a building, but everything that it takes to build the building also requires all this extra component, all
Yeah.
these extra components and all this extra planning, which you've explained pretty beautifully. And the same goes for tile and stone. The same goes for cabinets and
Sure.
millwork and other flooring. The lighting, I was actually going over lighting with a designer earlier, and this is the designer that buys a bunch from me, and I remembered that she sells lighting. And why, now that I know designers, why on earth would I try to go shop for my own lighting when I just can pick up the phone, call one
Yeah.
of these designers and be like, this is where I want this lighting and
Yeah.
this is my budget. What should I put there?
Right. Right.
So knowing your resources, your partnerships, the right partnerships, that saved me a lot of time
Sure.
combing through lighting in the internet, or going to 5 or 6 different lighting stores. And I
Mm-hmm.
probably cut out like 4 or 5 middleman. So let's talk about the middleman fee
Mm-hmm.
also,
Yeah.
because a lot of times people think they're buying direct from Home Depot or they're buying direct from, whoever, right? Any other big box brand.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really not. That product may be 5 or 6 people deep, in its origin.
Sure. Right. Well, so what I've found, Gloria, is that you've got these companies who have these private labels. I mean, let's talk about the grocery store, right?
Oh
Here.
yeah, grocery store is another example. Any
Sure.
grocery store.
Yeah. Right. It's supply chain. It's all there, right? But you have these generic brands. Man, Dave Ramsey would say they're all made in the same factory, right? It is
I
so.
love Dave
Um,
Ramsey.
yeah, he's wild, but so you, what I found is that manufacturers in the construction industry or any industry, but we'll keep it to construction, are very good at marketing,
Yeah.
right? or at least these middlemen can be very good at marketing, right? So that business development, which is really this crossroads of sales and marketing, right?
Hmm.
Positioning, all that kind of stuff. And, so you've got, I've got one in the back of my head right now that is that they don't manufacture anything. They just label everything, and they're really good at
Right.
marketing and getting their material out into the public and into distribution centers. They don't make anything. They don't have a single manufacturing site at all. At
Yeah.
all, right? They
No,
call
I
themselves,
I know. I see it on the
right?
tile supply side. I see it on the stone side. What do you mean you made that shell beige? You didn't.
Right. You didn't
You
make
know,
anything. Yeah,
you didn't make anything. You have a warehouse full of it. Good for you.
right. Yeah, this construction anchor and this construction anchor, and I can't, I really, and I'm not trying to, this isn't hyperbole. I really cannot count the number of times I've looked at something and talked to someone and I said, wait, we don't make that? Wait, you don't make that? They don't make this? Like it's no, they don't make it.
Right.
So, but there are people who are really, really good at making the stuff, and then and then other people who are really good at leveraging that in order to get something into the marketplace, right? And
Right.
so, um, we even I saw this even working for the paint manufacturer in the stores. Like we would make things, and we private
Hmm.
labeled stuff. Like there's some brands that very very well.
Yeah, of
But
course.
they don't make their own stuff. That company,
Right.
this paint manufacturer does makes it just private label. But anyway, uh, where was I going with this? Um, I don't know. I forget. There's just so many examples
Well, no,
of
they do,
yeah.
and I'll piggyback off of where you left off. Emser makes some of their own product. In fact, we have like 5,000, probably 6,000 almost SKUs at this point because they're always launching new product, especially this E by Emser line. But then there's other distribution partners that they work with to provide a full line of products for their customers, right? And there's quarries all over the world that everybody buys from, obviously, for the natural stone. And those relationships matter because the logistics of one company bringing from one quarry in, let's say, Turkey, and another company bringing from a quarry in Turkey is number one, it's not the same product. And number two, is it going to get the same way from Turkey to the United States? And the answer is no. you know,
Right.
and yes, they're both going from point A to point B, but one may cost three times more than the other just based off of the relationships that that company has or what other product they have coming in on container ships, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera. So I think a
Yeah.
lot of those relationships and partnerships, it goes back to those relationships and partnerships that you were talking about. And when you want to offer a full line of products, some of those products that I'm speaking of are like setting materials, right? In our
Mhm.
side of the world. So we're selling the thin set that you use to install the tile,
That's
the
right.
metal trim profiles that you utilize. Now most people are doing miters, thank God, because it looks classier than those metal trim profiles, and those things scratch unless you buy good ones. Buy good ones, guys. And
Yeah.
also just tools, right? Blades that people are going to need, those little
Mhm.
clips. And so all the different accessories, because the last thing you want is to have to go somewhere else if you're going to buy this product. And it's the same thing at the paint store, right? If we're continuing with the paint analogy, they sell rollers, they sell trays, they sell blue tape, they sell, painter's plastic, they sell those boots for your shoes, the paint sticks, like you name it, they got it.
Right.
Right. They even have those cloths so you can strain your paint. Did you know you need to strain your paint, people? You need to
You have
strain
to
your
strain
paint.
you have to strain your paint. I don't care how many times you shake it, what you do with it. It does not matter. Strain your paint. They're gonna find something, I promise.
Yeah, and the last thing you want when you're painting a perfectly smooth level 5 wall that you remember to wipe down and clean, Don't forget to wipe down and clean your walls, people. Wipe down and clean the walls.
Yeah. And most people don't know this. This is kind of, very, very random, but most people don't know this. We would, I've sent a lot of paint samples to the lab to ask what's wrong, right? Been to a site, all this stuff is peeling off, it's flaking off, or whatever it is. And 98% of this is statistic. I'm not making it up.
Oh, I'm sure people just didn't clean the walls.
98% of the time, there's some sort of contaminant on the back of the wall, and all it comes down to prep. So, and we're not segueing into this, I think, but when we're talking about prepping and planning and all that kind of stuff, it's this whole paint chip that failed is just a microcosm of the entire construction industry. If you're not planning, if you're not prepping, if you're not having the right conversations and processes first, something is going to fail. You will pay the price. You went the cheap route. You paid the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a lot of people focus on the finished product, and we can segue into this. I'm on the finished product side of the business now, and really, truly always have been. We worked mostly when I was a builder on interior finishes. And so that fine finish detail in millwork, in countertops, in paint, in lighting, in, caulk lines, if you will. Sure.
Yeah.
All of those little things matter, especially in markets like New York. But things that people cut corners in, regardless of the market, particularly commercial, I'm calling you guys out. And, also my DIY flippers, I am also going to call you guys out. Spec home builders that are doing affordable housing, I'm also going to call you guys out. There is a reason. Yeah, I know I'm calling them all out. There is a reason that the bag of prep formula, whether it's a paint primer, whether it's a primer for waterproofing on a floor, whether it's a bag of thin set, whether it's Red Guard, right? Red Guard is very popular for DIYers, as well as in the East Coast, South Florida, Laticrete up north. Any of these, the reason there's instructions and there are suggestions for use is because if you use it for the wrong thing and you go cheap, it's going to fail.
Yeah. Now, I don't know that I necessarily appreciate you calling me out, because I'm not great at reading instructions.
Well, I think a lot of these people read the instructions, and as somebody that now has to adhere to warranties, right? So I provide a product. Some people want a warranty with this product. Most people want a warranty with this product. We have to have a conversation with them, a respectful but true conversation, in that it is a partnership between installer and supply or distributor, right? The installer has to stick to industry standards and guidelines. And there's a reason that architects specify certain materials and they put certain notes in the plans. When you start to value engineer those things because you want to save a couple $1,000s here, and a couple $1,000s in a high rise could be a couple $100,000, right? So I'm not talking dollars and cents here, but if you want to then turn around, right, and say that you have a warrantyable product, you don't, right?
Yeah.
And I personally just choose not to work with those people. I tell them to go buy their product somewhere else, because for me, it's not worth it when folks cut corners. And I think it's like an education thing. But when you do cut corners, right, and that paint chip that you were alluding to a little bit earlier, it doesn't boil down to the painter didn't do his job right, or the paint quality sucks, I got a bad can of paint.
Right. That's right.
No, how was the surface prepped? And it's usually very rare that, there is something wrong with an actual piece of porcelain tile. It's usually the prep, or it's usually the cleanup afterwards. Guys, grout haze is a thing. Make sure you clean that grout off your tile properly, because otherwise people turn around, they're like, I keep cleaning my floor, but there's like this gunk on it that won't get off of it, right? And then of course there's products to get that stuff off, but the installers should do a better job with that.
Well,
So
one of
yeah,
some just kind of interject here, Gloria, a lot of this comes down to communication, in my opinion. One of the very first sales lessons I got was at a sales training a couple, about 20 something years ago. And the gentleman stood up and he said, you know what, I need to do something. I need to paint my floor. And then there's a whole bunch of us in this room, and you had people shouting this and shouting this. Well, I like this and I like this, and I was dumb and green. And and I heard someone say, well, what kind of floor is it? Right. So, and really just kind of getting around to the solution and saying, hey, you know what, this isn't just about the product. This is about the solution and the outcome that you're trying to get. Right. So if it's a wood floor, completely different. If it's a concrete floor with a coating on it, completely different. Right.
Yeah,
So
of course.
you have to, start asking questions. And a good contractor is going to be in full disclosure and say, hey, this is my situation. This is what I've got going. And, a good supplier is going to do the same thing and ask the question, right? And be curious, right? Otherwise, you're just selling a product, and selling a product isn't fun. Solving a problem is hella fun, right?
Of course.
And so that's it really just comes down to being curious, getting rid of these preconceived notions about what their objective is, because I've seen it before. Well, you probably haven't seen their project. Right. So ask the question about it, right? You become this real consultant. And I have been in situations, and I think others have as well, where a contractor says, hey, you know what, I want to do this. Or a manufacturer, in my case,
I was that contractor. I would walk into the paint store and I'd ask my man, Jerome, be like, hey, Jerome, who's the manager of the store. I'd be like, this is what we're trying to do. I even brought you a piece of the wall. Here's a piece of the paint I'm trying to color match. Whatever, right? We did a lot of historic stuff.
I never knew a Jerome in those days, so you're probably shopping at a competitor, so you're dead to me.
But probably. I'm most certainly was.
Yeah, so I think that's, you've got to have these conversations. You've got to ask questions. Otherwise you're gonna, I have to say, like, if you came to me as a contractor and said, hey, this is what I need. Mm-hmm. I could be an order taker all day long. That's easy. It's not fun. That's easy, but
no.
I'm more of this, the word that we've been tossing around on my team is challenger, right? I'm more of a challenger and say, okay, all right, cool story, bro. Right. What are you trying to do?
Right.
What is the problem that you're experiencing? And why is it such an urgency right now? Right. You're really trying to get into the pain point, solve the problem. That's a real supplier partnership. That's a trusted partnership. And in the end, if I solve your problem really, really well, you're going to make money as a contractor, and I'm going to make money as a supplier. It doesn't become about price at that point. It's the relationship.
It should never be about price. So let's talk about that elephant in the room, which is price, right?
Sure.
The lowest bidder typically wins because supply is supply, whatever. A piece of 2x4 is a piece of 2x4. A screw is a screw. A nail is a nail. But no, absolutely not. But to the banker looking at line items on a P&L, right?
Yeah.
Who is instructing the contractor to then instruct the project managers to then instruct the procurement team to go with the cheapest bid and to focus on that and that alone, versus the relationship management, Does the
Yeah.
supplier continuously deliver product on time over and over again when they say they're going to, even if it's 3 days later than when I wanted it? But at least they were honest with me that this is the fastest they could get it. But I know I'm going to get 100% of my order in completion and it's going to be accurate versus trying out someone new because we need it 3 days from now
Mhm.
or 3 days earlier from now or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, right? Because a lot of times the field could be salespeople, or could be the field building out in the field, subcontractors, trades. They don't understand that all of this comes from somebody else up here. It'd
Yeah.
be a chief operating officer, an accountant, a financial advisor. It could be the business partner, the wife, like
Yeah.
whoever's doing the books is
You
the
know,
one who
I've
is
heard more
telling
often.
everybody, is telling everybody what they can spend on that 2x4 and why they don't care that Joe's lumber is way better than Bill's lumber, even though they're right across the street from each other. And there's all these different variables, but every once in a while, Joe's lumber is a little bit more expensive than Bill's. But overall, they're usually beating the price. And we don't go to Bill's because the 2x4 is always bowed. And then we have to waste half a day returning wood and getting replacement wood because the wood wasn't right in the first place.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're spot
Yeah.
on. And
Yeah.
and a lot of times these decisions are made in the field by the project manager. I mean, who gets
Right.
bonused out? Who gets bonused out a lot of times if the project is under budget and meets certain KPIs, right? It's going to be the project manager in a lot of cases. So,
Yeah.
how are they compensated? On profit, in many cases. So, yeah, uh, cheap doesn't mean expensive. That's the phrase that many of us have heard, over the years. Cheap is what you pay up front. The cost is what you pay long term, right? And so I haven't fashioned myself as the cheapest folks or as the cheapest supplier, and I don't want to be.
Yeah.
On a real personal level, I've got a family to feed. I've got 4 high schoolers and a wife, and we have to manage our lives. And so if I'm not making profit for my organization isn't seeing value from me.
Of course.
So, as a supplier or a sales guy, I want to make as much money as I can. Now, I also, because I'm a responsible supplier and business partner to my clients, I understand that they've got to do the same thing. So we have to get ahead of those conversations about price up front and identify what's really valuable. And I've said it once. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. Price doesn't fall in the top 5 of the conversations that I would like to have.
Right.
And if that's the only thing that my prospective customer wants to have a conversation about, I'm not the right guy. I'm just not. I can be
Yeah.
competitive, right? But in the end, you're going to get me that goes along with that sale. You're not going to get a tail light warranty. You know what a tail light warranty is?
No, what's a
So
tail light
tail
warranty?
light warranty. My warranty is good until you can see my tail lights driving away after I've
Driving
delivered the
away.
material,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So that's the tail light warranty. That's not me. You're going to be able to call me. You're going to be able to call my branch, my partners, whatever it is. You can call my boss and their boss. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to be there throughout the duration of the project and make sure that you're successful. That's a real partnership. And so I'm not trying to just win. I'm trying to establish real long-term
Yeah,
partnerships.
it's not about
And
one sale, right?
yeah,
It's
not at all.
about building a long-term relationship with people. I have been fortunate enough in this industry and the almost decade plus that I've been in the industry to build some really, really nice, strong relationships. You are one of them. And some folks I have never done business with. It's more of a mentorship and friendship type relationship. And I remember when I first started my design build company, and we were doing a lot of drywall and painting, you were definitely a great resource to have and a voice to vent to, particularly when it comes to prep and things of that nature. But, not everybody's going to be a buyer. Not everybody's going to be a client. Not everybody's going to be a partner. But the relationships matter the most. Most of my business comes from relationships. It comes from people that know me, people who have done business with me in the past, know that I'm able to deliver certain results, that I manage projects and, things from A to Z with a white glove service. People expect that from me and nothing less from me. And that is the only reason that people do business with me. I think, we are not always going to be the cheapest in all things. And, we're also not always going to be the fastest. I sell wholesale tile and stone. So wholesale means that we need a little bit of time to move things around, right? And so I may not have stuff sitting in a local warehouse. I may need to pull stock or inventory, or pull from other allocated stock or inventory in order to fulfill an order, and then bring it over to a local warehouse from said distribution center. There's a lot of different moving parts, right? Versus, of course, going to that local shop where you can pick up whatever. And really, it is whatever, because it's to your discretion. Like, one box could be broken, one box could be good, could not be good. One white could be true white. Then you might get an off white, but they both have the same label. Like, you don't know what you're getting. But you can get it right away. And it probably costs more, right? So there's always a cost or a time or a quality that you are foregoing, depending on what your priority is, right?
You're right. Sorry for interrupting here, but I had a gentleman say to me once, "Look, I can sell anything for a penny, anything, and anything for a penny, right? And I can get the order. But if I don't have it, if I can't deliver it, if I can't serve it, if there's a 10-year waiting list on it, then what was the point?" Right? It was all smoke and mirrors. And that's not the kind of supplier that that someone of integrity would really want to have, right? So we don't operate off handshake deals anymore in this construction environment. There's contracts and signatures upon signatures and pages upon pages.
And thank God for that, because that he said, she said game is exhausting.
Sure. Yeah. But it is a very different world, but we still have to operate with integrity, whether our signature is being used or not. So the best conversations I'm having right now in my world are really centered around people looking at the total cost of ownership. And I've seen some solutions that are more expensive, at least on paper, from a piece price standpoint. But when you look at how the system operates and the amount of material that you no longer have to use because you're using this solution now, or because of the time saved here, right? You could really actually quantify that. Like I was making the example of fleet management, right? If you've got multiple locations on the manufacturing side, let's say, or on the construction side, if you got multiple job sites, whether they're locally or international or around the country, doesn't matter. If you're dealing with local regionalized systems, well, that's expensive because that's a lot of man hours that kind of goes into managing each of those as opposed to just managing one. That's a great conversation around price versus cost, and about supply chain and really making it. I mean, those are the best conversations I'm having right now. People who really get it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the best projects and the best conversations that I'm having are with builders who really don't build a lot throughout the year. but they build strategically. So they may build 8 to 10 projects, and out of those 8 to 10 projects, they might be staggered in different stages and different phases. And we're brought in pretty early on to be a part of the conversation because outside of just logistics, there's so many other things that, the tile affects. We're working on a project right now, for example, where the tile is inlaid in an eating kitchen, and I'm almost certain that they're putting like the customer name or something in there as well somewhere, right? So knowing the exact size of the space that we have, and how that layout's going to come into play, and the height, even of the tile itself, so that we can then have the proper piece of trim. And I mean, there's like all these little details. And then there's custom fireplaces where we have shop drawings upon shop drawings and different things. But I've also worked on commercial projects, right, where you have fireproof paint that needs to be submitted to an engineer, and it needs to be approved, and it needs to be stamped before you can even paint said trusses of paint. You think it's just white paint. It's not white paint. Right? It's a special kind of white paint that's fireproof. So there's
very different.
It's very, very different, right? So being brought in earlier on in the planning phase, we can also help manage some of those costs, because ideas can also get really expensive, particularly on the finish side. So understanding, okay, we have an allowance for this project in the contract, but we don't have set price yet for that part of the contract, and figuring out all the nitty-gritty details of what it is you want. Well, maybe what you want is too expensive and you need to scale back. Being brought in early on kind of helps us have that conversation with you, versus that shocker after everything is framed out or, prepped for this other idea that you then can't afford. Well, then you can't afford to undo it either.
That's right. My son uses this phrase when you kind of overstep or something like that, and he says, "Whoa, you have too much dip on your chip." And it's kind of funny, and he's taller than me, and he's got a deeper voice than I do, and
you've got too much dip. I love that though. I got it right away.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I'm like, yep. You kind of outkicked your coverage, as they say, right? So and I think that's, the real root of that is planning, and what your systems are when it comes to planning, who your partnerships are when it comes to the planning. And if you get to the end of the project and you realize there's too much project at the end of the money, you didn't plan well, right?
Yeah.
And so you and I had a conversation not too long ago about value engineering and all that kind of stuff, and that can become very reactive. And whereas if you're trying to value engineer to cut costs at the end of the project, you're really not creating any sort of value. I mean, the same could be said for a supplier. If I'm not in there in the beginning helping you to value engineer this thing before the project begins, maybe I haven't been a good partner to you. Or as a contractor, maybe you didn't realize you needed that partner, in the first place, right? So, I would encourage contractors and suppliers alike, look for the partners and try to be a partner to get ahead of it, so that you're not scrambling at the end. In the end, the outcome is what's important. You want to have a valuable outcome for everybody. That's what the built environment and construction is all about, is everyone being satisfied with the end result, occupying a wonderful place as a result of all that work.
Yeah, of course.
My passion's starting to come out here, but
no, but it's true. You can value engineer at the end, or you can value engineer at the beginning, and really value engineering. And most people hate that VE term. I came up with a term when I started working over here, and I'm sure other people use it, called cross matching. So I like cross match product because I'm really cross matching specifications, features, viscosity, whatever. So I don't like to use the term value engineer, but yes, if you're VEing product at the end of the project, then you're really just fixing bad planning, right?
Great.
And
100%. Yeah.
yeah, you could just plan properly from the get-go. Also, make yourself some contingency budget because that gas you were talking about, the truckers, the logistic charges, and all these other things that go into, and it's a line item on most
Sure.
orders, right? There's a
Yeah.
logistics and
Contingency.
transportation charge. Um, but yeah, build in some contingency for that logistics and transportation charge to go up, right?
Yeah,
Or
for
to
sure.
even exist. I think there are companies, particularly the smaller mom and pop shops, that don't have these extra line items or surcharges. And they're learning that the bigger outfits have to have this line item because that fluctuates so much. The commodities, that supplier we got to speak to in China, that just became 3 times, 4 times more expensive than it was at this time
There
last
we go.
year,
Yeah,
you
absolutely
know?
right. Yeah.
And
And
you
in a
still,
lot of cases, you can structure those contingencies, that
right.
little cushion. Hey, we've got this if we need it. If we don't need it, it goes right back to you.
Yeah, it goes right back to
Right?
your pocket. It's almost like a mini
Yeah.
savings account. Seriously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's right.
So I want to close with a two-part question.
Mm.
And the first part of the question is, what do most suppliers get wrong about builders? And then the second part is, what do builders get most wrong about
Mhm.
suppliers? And this is, of course, in your opinion, we will not take it as the word of God. Um, but we just, in the years that you've been in the industry, because it's been about, 2 decades, if not more, how do you see this?
Yeah. No, definitely not God. I don't care if it's my birthday and I'm, 40, blah, blah, 40 something years old, but, contractors, about the suppliers, what they get wrong about, well, yeah, I guess how they misinterpret suppliers is that that they're interchangeable. Well, I don't have to go here. I can just go right here. There's just a substitute. And that to me is the biggest one,
Okay.
because
I think that's a good one.
every organization is very, very different. How they go to market, how they supply their people. Charleston Heston would scream out loud, right? It's people, right? It is always about people, and so, if you've got relationships as a contractor, use them, lean on them,
Yeah.
cause them, help, be a change agent to help them get better. If As opposed to commoditizing the relationship and saying, well, I can just switch out this for this, right?
Right.
You know, I understand that people are going to, spread the wealth a little bit or whatever it is that they want to do, and I get all that, but they're not interchangeable, right? So Wells Fargo is not the same as Amex, is not the same as Wells Fargo, right? I mean, it's just not. They're not the same.
They're both
Um,
financial institutions, but they're not the same,
yeah,
you
they
know?
they do they do things very, very differently, um, and I think that they probably make assumptions that their suppliers know more about construction than they actually do, right?
Right.
So I worked on the supply side for so many years. I was amazed at all the things I learned every time I would get to a site. I was amazed, not surprised, but amazed at all the things that I did not know, right? So, be a partner to your supplier too. If you want them, if you like them, you like their product or whatever it is, invest in them too, and that's okay. So now, as far as what suppliers get wrong about contractors is, I've said it, right? Well, a lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine, right? I've said that a lot of times, and in some cases it's
Yeah.
true. You got to really push on some contractors, say, hey man, do better, buddy. But many of those emergencies are not the fault of your contractor, right? There's multiple trades that goes into building a restoration project or putting a high rise together or whatever. There's multiple trades that go on into it, and sometimes one trade trips up another for whatever reason.
Yeah,
They're
for
either
sure.
delayed, right? So it's the whole project has its own supply chain, and
Yes, it does. Yes, it
right.
does. That's why I like to like break down the nitty gritty. Like we always talk about the build side and all the different aspects and different peoples, but then the supply side has its own, and I didn't even think about putting it that way or referencing it that way. But yes, the build side has its own supply chain for sure.
For sure. Yeah. I think that, communication in the end on both sides and really an investment into each other is where you bridge that gap of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
It's critical. It really is.
I'm grateful for having experience in both. I feel like I can empathize and communicate in both worlds. And I still stumble a little bit. I think on the supply side, I luckily have incredible ops people that have been with the company. And it's one of the things I love most about this company. Most
Yeah.
people at this company have been with the company at least a decade, if not 2 decades, and some even more than that. So the folks that run the company and that are running the operations, the logistics, the relationships, have been managing these relationships for years and years. It's not like somebody new every 2 years or every, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Sure.
it's
No doubt.
true relationship built organization. And so the operations team that helps fulfill all of the orders that my people place, they run the show. I can't do anything without them. And sometimes I don't understand still the nuances of how things work. So I just tell my client, hey, we're going to make this happen. And then we got to make things happen. And everybody's like, oh my God, Gloria, what are you doing?
Yeah. Well,
And I'm
it's a
like, no,
team.
we got to make this happen. And of course, I'm like an ex-fitness instructor, so I'm over here being a cheerleader. Like, we got this. I have faith in you. I know you could do this. Just one more rep. Just let's call one more person. But I know that those emergencies, and I'm known for the person that you go to get stuff done, right? But the best projects, and I've been posting a lot about it lately, the best projects that I work on, the builders that order from me regularly are the ones usually that are planning months in advance. I have some years in advance they're planning
Mhm.
ahead, and this is
Yeah.
on the high rise side or the industrial side of things where there's a lot going on, and even public money that's involved to do some of the procurement, so you have to plan years in advance. But there's so much there that it takes to just delivering that one bag of thin set or that one crate of tile, or even if it's 10 or 20, and making it happen last minute. Man, somebody really, really likes you. If
Yeah.
they're making
All
that
right.
happen. So thank you to my amazing teams. Whenever you guys do make that happen, I always want to make a shout out and a plug to the warehouse teams, the DC teams, which is distribution center
It's
teams that
it's
just make
important.
things happen. They do.
Yeah.
They make everything happen. I
It's
make the
important to
promises,
acknowledge it.
but they make it happen. They
Right.
make it happen.
Yeah. They're never, as a salesperson, it's really easy to say, well, these are my customers. These are my clients. No, they're not.
No.
They belong to the organization and your team, and
Yeah, for sure.
your team is going to deliver, right? In the end, right? So you can be the architect, the quarterback, whatever it is you want to say, but in the end, the team is going to deliver for the organization.
And I rely on that
Mhm.
100%.
Yep.
I haven't even been with this organization for a year, but even as a builder, I relied on that. I relied on my team, all the subcontractors that went into a build, and my suppliers to deliver product on time so that they could build, you know, the
Right.
subcontractors. So it's all a team effort. And without the people, it's all about the people, back to the people. You know, we can't do absolutely anything. So we're here at the top of the hour. I know it's your birthday, man. And there's a bunch of other people that probably want to hang out with you. Why don't you, real quick, real briefly, for the nerds out there who are still watching, even on the replay, tell us what exactly it is that you do now and how can people reach you?
Yeah. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn is a great way to find me. You can look up Ozzie Osborn or Jose Ozzie Osborn. That's Ozzie. They can find me on LinkedIn. That's going to be the quickest way to get me. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and but as far as what I'm doing, I've got a couple things going on, right? And so one of them, the primary thing that I'm doing is I'm working on the industrial distribution side. I work for the largest global industrial distributor on the planet, global, and I work with OEMs, supplying uh, uh, MRO and all the stuff that comes together. I don't want to get too specific because I'm not here to broadcast all that, but
Yeah.
my sweet spot is building inventory management programs for OEM manufacturers, and having a whole lot of fun with it. Not just selling the bits and pieces, that small little parts, but what I'm doing is I'm selling a way out from keeping those small parts from becoming an expensive problem. And
Of
so
course.
really working on that supply chain side in that particular vertical. I've still got some coaching and some sales coaching that I'm doing, and that's a whole lot of fun. It's really energizing, scratches that itch. But in the end, what my real passion is, outside of my family and providing for them and spending time with them and enjoying things like my birthday, my real sweet passion in life is to catalyze greatness in others. Love mentoring people. So if you've got a young sales professional or construction professional out there that wants to reach out, have a conversation, I'm open, I'm willing, and I think it's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much again for your time today. I am one of those young people, you know, I'm not 40-ish. 40, but not 40-ish yet.
Right, right,
But
yeah.
yeah, I am one of these young people, young at heart for sure, that has had the honor, the pleasure of being mentored. I feel like by Ozzie, whether it was on purpose or subconsciously that you were doing it. But I feel like we all learn from each other 100%. And
Yeah,
when I was building a business and now working on the supply side, there's always experts that you're going to lean on in your organization, outside your organization. And I've vetted this one really, really well. So I thank you again for your time. I thank you for your wisdom. I encourage folks to slide into your DMs and get to know you. And yeah, until next time, guys.
that's
Bye.
great. Thank you.
If I can find this mouse, let's see here. Where is it? Oh, there we go. All right. Bye,
Had a,
guys.
had a great time. Bye now.